In this lesson, we're going to create our floor tiles using repeatable geometry. Alright, so if we were going to create floor tiles, we wouldn't want to create each individual one. We do have the option to clone objects. However, whenever we have a single tile and we multiply that across a large length and a large width, it tends to look a little odd with just that entire tile. It can get a little monotonous and it really messes up the design. So a great way to kind of break that up is to create some differences in the design. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a floor tile, and then we're going to create a single grate, and I'll teach you how to repeat that across the width and then also across the length. Alright, so to get started here, let's go ahead and just block out the sizes that we'll need for our layout. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a plane, and I'm going to take my length and my width to 1.5 to 1.5. Alright, so I'm going to make this tile square. Let me go ahead and bring this right up to here, okay, right about in this position. And then I'm going to create another plane, and this is going to represent my grate. So I'm going to create one that's a little bit smaller, and the width on this one is going to be 1.5, just like before. And then I'm also going to type in my length. I'm going to make that 0.33. Okay, now these are specific values that I've already typed in just to make things go a little bit faster. Okay, so I've set these up. They're the same height. And what I want to do is I want to get these matched up perfectly. So what I can do is I could actually select this tile here. Let's go ahead and hit select both these objects here. And actually, let's select our layout. Let's right click and hide that, so that way it's not flashing so much. I want to line these up perfectly. So I want to get these lined up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my hierarchy, and I'm going to go to Effect Pivot Only, and I'm going to snap my pivot of this object to this corner right here. So I'm going to right click on my snap toggle, and I'm going to set that to vertex, and then I'm going to go ahead and move that right up here and move that pivot point right into position. Now let's go ahead and make sure that our snaps is activated, and we'll go ahead and we'll move that and we'll snap that right to that corner. So what this is going to allow me to do is snap this to this corner here, and I know that those are now perfectly even. Alright, so now that I have this, let's go ahead and create our objects that we need. So selecting our grate, let's hit Alt-Q to isolate that. And I'm going to go ahead and convert it to editable poly, and I'm going to change its color just to make this easier to see. And let's go to edge mode and select these edges right here across the middle, and we're going to use connect, and we're going to bump our segments up to create the holes that we want in our grate. So I'm going to go up to something like 22 sides. Alright, now that I have that, let's go to polygon mode by hitting 4 on the keyboard and select all those polygons. And then I'm going to use inset, and we're going to do by polygon, so that way it creates individual polygons on each one of those, just like we did with the grate in our event. So now that I have this, let's go ahead and leave that at 0.01. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to extrude that in a negative direction. So let's do negative 0.01, let's do 1.5, and then we'll hit OK. Now that I've got this, I can go ahead and delete those out of there, and now I've got my grate set up here. Now if you want, you could go ahead and you could round this off a little bit if you wanted to add in some segments, but I think we're pretty good here. Alright, so I've built that, and let's go ahead and hit Alt-Q to bring our tile back. And with this tile, let's go ahead and convert it to editable poly, and I'm going to select these edges. Let's turn off that snap there. Let's select these edges, and we're going to connect that with two segments. I'm going to pinch that and spread that apart, and let's go up to negative 70, and then I'm going to select these edges. Let's do the same thing, and that should keep our values, and we're going to hit OK. Now that I have those, I'm going to go ahead and select these edges across the middle. We'll do connect again, but this time let's go ahead and just drop that down to 0, and then let's pinch that apart to about 35. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to do the same thing here, and we'll do connect 35. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these edges right here, and with those two edges selected, I'm going to convert their selection to vertex by holding down Control, and then I'm going to scale them in the Y direction. Okay, so if I pull those a little bit closer together, I can go ahead and grab both of these loops, hold down Control, go to vertex mode, and scale those apart to get that shape that I'm looking for here. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and grab these polygons right here in the middle and extrude those down just to create a little bit of a pattern in my tile. And let's do negative 0.03 and hit OK. And so now I've got this tile started, and what I want to do is I want to create just a little bit of detail in this, so just a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and go to edge mode. Let's select all of these edges in this ring, and I'm going to use connect, but we're going to do one single segment, and we're going to leave that at 0. Let's do the same thing on this side as well. And I'm just going to hit connect, and then I'm going to go to polygon mode, select these polygons, and I'm going to inset those, and we'll inset those to 0.02. Hit OK, and then I'm going to scale those in the X just to make those a little bit thinner, and then extrude in a negative direction. Okay, now actually I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to use bevel, so I'm going to extrude that in a negative direction here and give that a little bit of a bevel, so that way I can kind of see down into it. And then we'll hit OK. Let's go ahead and change this to a black color, give it a gray material, and I'm going to hit Z just to frame in on this object. I'm going to hit G to turn off my grid. And now we've got some geometry that we can use here that we can start to repeat. Now you can go ahead and you can modify this object as much as you want. You could add more detail. You could change it to whatever shape you like. But what I want to do now is go ahead and show you how to repeat these objects from one another. Now, what I could do is I could come in here and I could create this shape and copy it over and clone it. Or what I can do is I could select both of these and move those over together, holding down Shift and moving those across. Okay, so we'll come in here and we'll drop that across. And you'll see that I have some clone options. I can make it a copy, and what that will do is make all of these objects unique to one another. So I could change this one without affecting this tile. Now if I go to instance, these two objects will be tied together. So if I change any of the components of this object, it's going to change the components or sub-objects of this object. So if I come in here and move a vertex on this object, it's going to do the same thing over here. Same thing with this grate. Now I could use a reference, and any time that this object is used, no matter what file it's used, it will change it. So let's say that a teammate is working on a scene, and I change these tiles in the main project, and I change it up on the reference, it's going to change it in my teammate's project as well, no matter if it's opened up in a different scene altogether. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make this an instance and hit OK. And now let's create one more of these. I'm going to hold down Shift, and we're going to drag this out to this edge here, and we'll make that an instance as well. Now you'll also notice that whenever you have objects selected that are instance, you'll notice that their editable poly or their modifiers are going to be in bold. Okay, so you can tell that all of these are now instanced. Now if you want to make these unique and you don't want them to affect the others any longer, you would simply hit Make Unique, and that would break that away from the instancing. Okay, now let's make sure that we have these lined up the way that we want them. So I'm going to move this grate here just a little bit. Now moving and rotating these objects doesn't matter. Okay, it's not going to affect the others. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that issue. All right, now these look great. Now what I want to do is I want to group these together just so that I know that I can create more copies of this. So I'm going to hit group, and I'm going to call this tile. And then I want to make a copy of this. All right, so to do this, we're going to use a different method. Now we can hold down Shift and clone that and set it up as number of copies, but I want to use the array tool to do this. All right, so let's go ahead and go to Tools, and you'll see Array. Now this dialog box can be a little confusing at first. Now what I want to do is I want to copy these tiles incrementally. So I want them to move a specific amount of meters in one certain direction, and I want it to make as many copies as I tell it. Now, using the totals side of it, what that is going to do is it's going to create those copies, but only create that amount of copies within a certain distance. So let's go ahead and see the difference here. So the desired look that I want is I want each copy to move 1.5 meters. So that way they butt right up against one another every single time. And then I can tell it what type of object to create, so I can do an instance if I want to. And then I can tell it what direction to move in. So here's my count. I want it to move in one direction. Okay, now if I want it to move in 2 or 3 directions, I would go ahead and set up these options here. But in my case, just one direction, and that has my count. So I'm going to set up 10 tiles for right now, and I could type in anything else that I want. So if I wanted to do 15, I could do so, but I think 10 will do it. And then I can preview this to see what that looks like. So if I go ahead and spin around here in my orbit, I can see what that looks like. If I right click and unhide all, you can see my scene here. And that's going to give me plenty of tiles to work with. Now I know that that goes through the other side, but that's okay. All right. So that's going to give me the desired look that I want. Now let's take a look at it with using the totals portion here. So if I go ahead and switch over to totals, what this is going to do is it's going to move these objects. It's going to give me 10 of this object as an instance, but it's only going to extrude these out or send them out in one direction for 15 meters. So if I preview this, you see that we get kind of the same deal, and it's the exact same. So let's take this down, and what are you going to notice here? Well, it's going to go ahead and keep the 10 copies, but if I draw this down, let's say that I want 10 copies within 10 meters, you'll see that they begin to overlap one another. Okay, so let's kind of move this over here so we can see that a little bit better. So now they're overlapping. So if you want those to move out incrementally and not within a certain distance like what we want, we're going to go ahead and use the incremental. So we can just switch back and forth by using these arrows. Okay. Now you can mix and match these if you want. So if you want them to rotate, you can input values using incremental, and then if I want them to rotate a total value, I can switch that over, and it's going to give us the exact same thing. So if I switch this over to X to 90 degrees, we get kind of this shape right here. Okay, so a very neat looking design. So you can get all kinds of different ways of copying these objects. Now let's go ahead and take that back down to 0, as I don't want that. And I want to set this up to 1.5. And that extrudes out exactly the way that I wanted. I'm going to keep those as instanced. And then to finalize, we'll just simply hit OK. Now I can come in here and I can select these as a group. So I want to select all of these. And then I'm going to set them up in array in the following direction here. Okay, so let's go ahead and use Tools, Array. We'll go to our Y direction. Let's type in 0 in our X, Y direction 1.5. We made those square. And then we'll do, let's say, 4. Okay, and I don't necessarily need all of those. Sorry about that. Let's just select these right here. I didn't need those ones along the back there. Oh, it is going to select those. Sorry about that. So we'll have to do this a little bit differently. Let's select these as a group. So sometimes it's a little hard to select. Let's go to our selection tool. Deselect our layout. And we want to go in our Y. Now 1.5 is going to be from here to there, okay, on this tile. So we had 0.33 and 0.33, so we add that to 1.5. That's going to give us 2.16. So we want to type in our value here of 2.16. Now that's from here to here. So we need to double that amount, so we'll multiply that by 2, and that's going to give us actually 4.32. Okay, so I'm going to go into the y direction, and that's going to be positive y, as you can see here on your world compass here. Y is pointing off in this direction, so we know we're good. We can always do a preview, see what that looks like. And there we go. Now you'll see that we have a little bit of an issue. Something's going on with our options. So let's just dial that down, and let's bring those together. Let's go to 4 and see what that looks like. So if that doesn't work out, you could always dial that down with your preview, and that's always a good thing. So I'm going to go down to this edge here, and just taking a look at this, and it looks like 4 is going to be our best value. Okay, and let's only do 2 copies. Might even get away with just, 2 is going to be the best thing. So let's hit OK, and there we go. So we've just shown you how to use the array tool to create multiple copies of these tiles. Now the final thing to do is to select the polygons across the bottom of our floor and just lower that down. So I'm going to grab my move tool and I'm going to pull that down so that way it's not intersecting with my tile any longer. Alright, so now that we've done that, we're going to look into attaching and detaching objects for modeling purposes.